Let's talk now to Mike Neville, who's retired Scotland Yard Detective Chief Inspector, because we've got plenty to talk about. First of all, Britain splashing out £1.5 million on a prison vehicle fleet as it helps launch a brand new jail. But it's not here, it's in Albania. Mike, a very good morning to you.
Yes, good morning, Mike. It's good that we're funding Albanian jails, isn't it?
It's great, isn't it? I mean, I was just reading the story earlier this week about how it's now become confirmed by the Home Office that the entire cannabis business in Britain is now run pretty much exclusively by Albanian drug gangs, most of whom came here on the small boats.
Yeah, no doubt, fleeing persecution.
Oh, yeah.
And I think 1 in 7 of the foreign criminals in our jails are Albanians, so it does make sense to ship them back. But it's a real pity, isn't it, that we don't get some sort of money from every other country whose prisoners we look after, right, because our jails are full to brimming, and we're looking after 10,000 foreign criminals who really should just be shipped out, and then we'll have those places for... We've got enough bad people of our own without bringing the bad folk from all over the world.
Well, exactly right. I mean, I was under the impression that, you know, if we removed some of the foreign prisoners, we would actually make more room for our own prisoners, thereby, instead of having loads of convicts running around the country who have been released because you've got nowhere to put them, we would actually create, I don't know, 10,000 new spaces.
Absolutely right, and those 10,000 places would be very useful, because what we've seen in Scotland in particular is that they're releasing people. 10% of the people they release haven't even got an address. So what do we expect that these people will do? They're going to go back to a life of crime. They're going to be stealing at least the basics of food and clothing, and then they'll be stealing more because many of them will be addicted to drugs. So what you have is a crazy situation where one government department thinks, right, I'll release all these scallywags into society, and that frees up 5,000 places. What they don't take into account is that the police have got to then chase them round, because many of these people will commit crime within hours of being released. They don't speak to the local authority, who have to find some accommodation for these characters, and they don't speak to the probation service as opposed to manage them. So what you end up is an absolute fiasco where no one wins. The prisoner who's released doesn't win. Many of them want to go back because it's cold outside and it's wet. And of course, society has to put up with many of these people, what they call hyper-prolific criminals, the 9% who commit half of all crime. And so they're back on it as soon as they go out, and we all suffer. And this was a really stupid thing to do, Mike.
It really was, but unfortunately it's going to get worse, isn't it? Because I think the number that are going to be released overall is something approaching 5,000. You know, we've already seen, I think, 1,700 released in the first batch here in England. Scotland, as you say, have done it as well. But it looks as though there could be, over the course of the next, say, 2 years, there could be as many as the sort of population of the entire prison system, you know, sort of upwards of 75,000, 80,000, in a sort of revolving door scenario.
That's right, and one of the big problems, as was alluded to earlier on your show, is this work from home. So many of the Home Office officials are working from home, they're hard to contact, things aren't coordinated. So you would have thought, wouldn't you, that when the prison population got to 90%, there'd be some kind of red light, you know, alarm, the prison population is 90%. But they didn't notice until it was 97%. Oh, my God, the prison's nearly full.
Right.
Whose job it is, and that's the Tories as well. So there's no, like, it's not just Labour. Both of these parties are equally as bad. They've allowed this to happen. And what the other thing as well, of course, the people who release them, they live in nice places, and they release these scoundrels who go back to the council estate where they came from, and they continue to cause misery, thieving, drug taking, robberies, antisocial behaviour. And the small people, the little people who live on these estates, they live in fear because these horrible individuals are out of prison when they should be locked up, whilst the Home Office officials are living at in some nice village in a nice part of their home counties, and it has no impact whatsoever on them.
No, I mean, there is a sense, isn't there, at the moment in Britain, it seems to me anyway, certainly in London, that there is a kind of lawlessness to the place, you know, that people are committing crimes on a daily basis. It might be called low-level crime, like me getting my phone stolen, or somebody's handbag getting pinched, or some pickpocket going for you, you know, but there's a lot of that kind of thing going on, and somebody needs to get to grips with it, because it's making London now a place where people don't want to come.
Well, that's exactly right. You had your phone nicked. Somebody tried to steal mine outside Charing Cross police station. It's all over the place. And what it sends is a message that you can just get away with it. So only 1% of thefts are solved. So people just bundle into these shops. They're stealing, basic things like coffee. Then we're told sob stories that they're taking baby milk to feed their children. They're not at all. Much of this baby milk is shipped out to Vietnam.
Right. Well, they're selling it, yeah.
Organised stuff. And what it says to the average person is, you are obeying the rules, you're obeying the law, you're stupid.
Yeah.
And when that happens, that's when society starts to break down.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Just finish up with a guy who's in the Daily Mail today. I mean, unfortunately, we've done Plank of the Week already, but I think he would definitely qualify. A senior police officer who kept his job despite using prostitutes has lost an astonishing compensation claim that he tried to make against the Metropolitan Police. But as a result of making the claim, his previous anonymity was blown, and now everybody knows who he is.
And I knew him, and he wasn't a very competent man. He was brought into the Met for all the wrong reasons. Here's a man who's using prostitutes, whose role was to try and encourage more women to join the police. I don't know if it was all part of a scheme, but what it just sends some crazy message out, doesn't it? That the reputation of the Met, I was proud to be a Scotland Yard detective. I'm forever emailing Mark Rowley and saying I'll come back and help. And get
every time you come on, you tell me this, and he never bothers to answer you, does he?
No, he doesn't, and it's a shameful thing that there's a lot of ex-detectives would go in there help, but what they've done, they've employed a lot of people for all the wrong reasons. As Martin Luther King said, a very wise man, we should judge people by the content of their character.
Yes.
When we don't do that, we make silly, stupid mistakes, and that's what's going on at the moment.
Right. Yeah, this guy's name is Jeffrey Booth, and he was meant to have been sacked because of all the call girls that he'd apparently been using in an original report that came out some time ago. But he was simply given words of advice and allowed to stay in his job, for which he was paid £100,000 a year, trying to recruit, as you say, more women into the police force. But instead of just leaving it at that, he decided to sue them for compensation. And now everybody knows who he is. I mean, it's extraordinary. Apparently he claimed that he suffered from sex addiction, which he said was a disability.
Well,
I mean, he's a charmer, this guy, isn't he?
Well, we've all a bit of that disability, but what the other problem is, well, what he's seen is Commander Julian Bennett was the commander in charge of the drugs policy, who was booted out for then taking cannabis himself, but then managed to appeal and come back. So he was paid for 18 months on more than 150 grand a year he was probably on, and he's been reinstated because they didn't do the discipline procedure correctly. So Jeff Booth probably just thought, I'll take a gamble on this. And it's just, all it does is drag the reputation of the police further down. And all those hard-working officers on the street, they're the ones who ultimately suffer because the bosses are making them look like fools.
Yeah, absolutely right. Mike, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Mike Neville, there, retired Scotland Yard Detective Chief Inspector. That story in the Mail is absolutely extraordinary.